You are listening to STR, the Sandy Times Radio, culture, music, and beyond.
Welcome back to Watch the Icon, the podcast where legendary timepieces aren't just discussed, they're decoded. I'm Sophia Brontwine, publisher of the Sandy Times, and in this 8th episode of our 10-part series, we shift gears from motorsport to modernism, from pit lanes to palace gates. Last time we explored the rebellious Tag Heuer Monaco, the square that broke the speed barrier and etched itself onto Steve McQueen's wrist. Today we study a shape even more radical and infinitely more refined. It's a watch inspired by war, worn in peace, and designed with such quiet power that it never needed to evolve too far from its origin. This is the story of the Cartier Tank, a timepiece born in the trenches, elevated on red carpets, and worn by everyone from monarchs to mavericks, artists to activists, a rectangle, a revolution, a true design immortal. Let's go back over a century to the year 1917. The First World War was still raging. Mud, steel, smoke had reshaped the landscapes of Europe. Among the newest machines on the battlefield was something previously unseen, a massive mechanical beast, crawling over terrain on metal tracks. The Renault FT-17 tank. Sleek for its time, the FT-17 had a distinctive silhouette, a long body flanked by caterpillar treads and a square turret at the front. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a modernist form, and it made an impression on Louis Cartier. Louis, the grandson of Cartier's founder and head of the brand's Paris operation, had already revolutionized the world of watches with the Santos, one of the first wristwatches ever made for man. But in 1917, he sketched something bolder. A rectangular case flanked by parallel brancards or sidebars, directly referencing the profile of a tank viewed from above. The result wasn't decorative, it was structural, architectural, radical, and unlike any other watch on the market. The Cartier Tank was born. While round pocket watches were still the norm, Louis Cartier's Tank was pure geometry. Its vertical bars, its square dial, its Roman numerals and chemin de fer minute track, the blued steel hands, the sapphire cabochon crown. Together, these elements created not just a timepiece, but a graphic object, a piece of wearable architecture. It wasn't just about telling time, it was about defining a line. The first example, the Tank Normal, was presented in 1919. Just 6 were produced in that first year, but its influence would ripple across decades. In 1921 came the Tank Cintre, longer, curved, more elegant. Then the Tank Chinoise in 1922, inspired by Chinese temple gates. The Tank Guichette in 1928. It was a digital jump-hour avant-garde masterpiece. But at the core of every variant remained the same DNA. Minimalist, modernist, unmistakable. The Tank wasn't just Cartier's watch, it was Cartier's language. Legend has it that Louis Cartier gave one of the first tank watches to General John Pershing, commander of American forces in Europe during World War I. It was a fitting tribute, a gift born of the very battlefield where their fates had crossed. But the tank's ascent wasn't military, it was cultural. In the 1920s and 30s, the watch became a favorite of artists and aristocrats. Duke Ellington, the jazz maestro, wore a tank. So did the Maharaja of Patiala, the Prince of Nepal, Fred Astaire. And then, a new kind of royalty took notice. In the 1960s, the Tank Louis Cartier found its most iconic wearer, Jacqueline Kennedy. Given to her by her brother-in-law, the watch became one of Jackie's most treasured possessions. She wore it constantly, often with a canvas strap, in effortless contrast to its elegance. It became part of her uniform, part of her myth. In 2017, the very watch sold at auction for nearly $380,000. Bought, it's said, by Kim Kardashian. A different kind of royalty, for sure. But Jackie wasn't the only American icon to fall for the Tank. Few writers had an aesthetic as curated as Truman Capote. Known for his sharp tongue and sharp pursuits, Capote was a fixture of New York's elite literary scene, and he had a tank to match. Capote's tank didn't just mark the hours, it marked his persona. He once quipped in an interview, "If you are not wearing a Cartier Tank, are you really dressed?" It was half joke, half manifesto. Whether sipping martinis at the plaza or throwing the infamous black and white bowl, Capote's tank was part of the story, a rectangle of elegance on a wrist full of wit. Andy Warhol wore his Cartier Tank every day, but famously never wound it. "I don't wear a tank to tell the time," he said. "In fact, I never wind it. I wear a tank because it's the watch to wear." Warhol's quote about not winding his tank is famous, but the way he wore it says even more. Photographs show Warhol in leather jackets, black turtlenecks, or deconstructed tailoring, all with a small tank peeking from under his cuff. It was the ultimate contradiction. An anarchist in couture, a pop artist in precious metal. The tank for Warhol was less about timekeeping and more about visual framing. It became part of his silhouette, his myth, his visual language. In a way, Warhol treated the tank like he treated Marilyn or Mao, an icon to be repeated, deconstructed, recontextualized. The tank is not a watch that shouts. It doesn't boast complications or oversized dimensions. It doesn't need a rotating bezel or an exhibition caseback. What it offers instead is presence, a sense of proportion, a visual clarity that feels inevitable. It is small, often around 23 mm wide, and yet it commands attention like few watches ever made. It moves effortlessly between genders, between formal and casual, between centuries. It is said that Princess Diana often wore two watches. One was her own, the other belonged to Prince Charles, and sometimes on her wrist, alongside the Tank Française or a classic Tank Louis, sat a more masculine piece, a symbolic gesture of support during his polo matches. Though unconfirmed, it's become part of the Tank's mythos, that it can live in both worlds, masculine and feminine, soft and strong, royal and rebellious. It's that fluidity that makes the Tank so enduring. It's not just a shape, it's a statement, and sometimes a secret. From Princess Diana, who wore a Tank Française with a tuxedo shirt, to Yves Saint Laurent, who paired his with a safari suit, from Muhammad Ali to Rami Malek, from Catherine Deneuve to Michelle Obama. Few watches are this versatile or this revered. Over the years, Cartier has introduced numerous Tank variations, each with its own twist, but all grounded in the same essential language. Tank Americaine, 1989, elongated, curved, bold. Tank Française, 1996, with an integrated metal bracelet, sportier, more contemporary. Tank Solo, a more accessible model with quartz options. Tank Must, a revival of the bold, colorful 1970s collection, now with solar-powered dials and minimalist variations. Speaking of Tank Must. By the 1970s, Cartier was in a moment of reinvention. The brand had long been the jewelry of kings, but the global economy and global taste was shifting. Under the direction of Alain Dominique Perrin, Cartier introduced a more accessible line, Le Must de Cartier. This was a bold move. Imagine a brand as exclusive as Cartier releasing watches with gold-plated cases and quartz movements. Crazy, some said. But Le Must de Cartier, and especially the Tank Must models, were a sensation. With colored lacquered dials in deep burgundy, emerald green, and Yves Klein blue, the Tank was reborn as a fashion-forward accessory. The shape remained, but the aura shifted. From royal saloons to Parisian sidewalks, from old money to new expression. It was a moment when the Tank proved it could be timeless and timely. But perhaps the most faithful to Louis Cartier's vision remains the Tank Louis Cartier. Delicate, restrained, manually wound. A watch that hasn't needed to change much in over 100 years. Cartier doesn't chase trends, like Patek Philippe. It trusts in time. And time has proven the tank indelible. Why does the tank still matter? In a world dominated by complexity, the tank is simplicity, but with depth. It's a reminder that good design doesn't age, it matures. That a rectangle can be radical, that symmetry can be subversive, that restraint is a kind of rebellion. The tank is not about movement specs. It's about movement in the emotional sense. The way something so small can carry history, culture, identity. And it is still being worn, not as a relic, but as a statement. Not just by collectors, but by characters. Today, more than 100 years after its creation, the Cartier Tank is still in production, still instantly recognizable, still quietly powerful. It survived wars, style revolutions, the rise of digital. It adapted but never bent. It's not a novelty, it is a constant. A tank that doesn't crush but cuts, through time with elegance. That's it for episode 8 of Watch the Icon. The Cartier Tank wasn't designed to be loud. It was designed to last, to reflect an era and then transcend it. It's not just a watch. It's a silhouette, a legacy, a line drawn in time. Next time we step into the golden light of Art Deco and flip the story, literally. In episode 9, we explore the enduring elegance and hidden genius of the Jaeger LeCoultre Reverso, a watch created for polo players, reborn as an icon of design and beloved by collectors who appreciate subtlety, ingenuity and symmetry. With its swiveling case, geometric lines and dual identity, the Reverso is more than a watch. It's a conversation between function and form, heritage and reinvention. If you've been enjoying the series, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review and share Watch the Icon with your fellow horology enthusiasts. Got a tank on your wrist? Show us how you wear it. We are always watching. And remember, time may be round, but icons come in all shapes.